The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to Call Camp. I've been off a couple of months here. They've been carrying the torch without me, so it's good to be back. Today we have a really interesting program about how to turn a coaching program into a coaching culture. And when I saw this this title that was put together by Kelly at SalesHood, I was excited by it. I mean, one of the things I like to do here is I never try to lead the witness, if you will, let them come up with their own concepts for what we should be talking about. And I talk about culture a lot. So I define culture as what are people doing when no one's looking? So if you can have a strong culture and people are operating in a certain way when no one's looking, it's just better for everybody in the organization is what I find. To lead this in before I introduce Kelly, our guest coach today, I want to just stop and just spend a moment on the types of call coaching. Coaching is one of these words. There's a sales training company called Miller Hyman, and they talk about green words. Green words meaning if you say the word green, it means so many different things to so many different people. Green could mean money. It could mean I'm seasick. It could mean environmental. It can mean all these different things. And coaching is another one of those green words. If you think about the different types of coaching that are out there in Call Camp, we're doing call coaching, which is one type of call coaching, but certainly not the only. There are many, many other types like QBRs, quarterly business reviews, if you will, business planning, territory planning, individual deal reviews, personal development, time management, so many different types of coaching that are out there in sales and in business in general. And that's why I'm really excited to have Kelly on here so we can talk about some of those other types of coaching. We're going to tie it back into call coaching here, and we're going to talk about how that all fits together. The thing that's great about Kelly is Kelly has worked at real big companies like Verizon, as well as having worked at a lot of startups, and he's really an entrepreneur at heart. He's a sales leader who's now a marketer, a VP of marketing for a sales enablement technology company called SalesHood. So because of that, we got a unique perspective. Kelly, say hello to everybody.
Well, hi, Steve. Thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody to attending today. Real happy to be here.
And you'll pick up very quickly, hopefully, that Kelly is not from America. No, he is a foreigner. It's true. He's a Canadian. So we love having Canadians on Call Camp as well. So let's just take a quick poll, and then I'm going to hand it off to Kelly, who's got just a killer program for us. Have you ever been taught how to coach? Sam, can you kick that open so I don't screw something up, or do I have to do it? I got Sam here, our marketer, sitting on my left. So, hey, there you go. Because I've screwed this one up time and time again, as call campers have seen. There should be an open poll. Have you ever been taught how to coach? It's a pretty simple question. It's either yes or no. That's simple. Yes or no. So we're going to give you a couple minutes. So Kelly, what do you like better, Canada or the United States?
Well, I'm from the Toronto area, and I love Toronto, but I live down now in Orange County, California, and I have to say that the climate is a lot better here. I can tell you that.
No, I can't believe it. I spent 2 weeks this summer with my family in Orange County. We really did enjoy it when I was seeing clients down there. It was a blast, but boy, that traffic's tough. Then again, Toronto's traffic's just as bad. All right, so let's see what we're looking at. Sam, what are the people saying?
We're looking at 55 or 58% are saying yes, they have been trained.
Very good. And then that would mean the rest said no?
Yep.
I hope. Okay, so 58% are saying yes, I've been trained how to coach, but still we're seeing a big discrepancy because shame on us. Shame on us if we're putting people in manager roles and we're not teaching them how to coach. That's what Kelly's here to talk about today. Everyone tweet us at Call Camp, hashtag Call Camp. At Call Camp, this is an engaging dialogue and a conversation. We hear you. And if you ask a question or make a comment, we usually say it live on the show, part of what we believe in here. All right, Kelly, take it away. So talk to us about how do we make coaching work in an organization?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I'll just refer to the statistic that came in there. So we had just shy of 60% saying they've been trained to coach, which is actually pretty good. I usually it's the opposite. I see kind of like more 40% of folks say they have been trained to coach. So we got a little smarter and better skilled audience with us here today. But even if you have been trained, having this conversation with sales managers and sales VPs and CROs, often the conversation I hear is that they still feel though that they kind of lack the skills. They don't know quite how to give constructive feedback, or maybe that constructive feedback is received in a different way from the sales rep. Maybe they could use a little bit better skills in asking some development questions, and maybe they could be prioritizing coaching more. So even though we've got 60% of the audience has had that sales training, there's obviously always room to improve, and that's what we hope to give you today is some tips and use some practical examples with some call coaching to help you be a better coach and manager. But to make coaching work for you, what we really talk a lot about is kind of a prescribed program for managers. There is a methodology to be a better coach and to help your managers be better coaches with their frontline folks. We recommend a lot of pre-work. If we're going to have reps come together for a coaching session, they should show up with some pre-work. They should show up with real deals to talk about. They should show up with their forecast to talk about. They should show up with examples of things that worked well and things that really could be improved. Maybe they lost a deal. Maybe they're consistently losing to a particular competitor. If they do that pre-work, show up to their coaching session with you, or if it's in a peer group environment, you're going to have a lot more engaged reps. And that's really the third thing is we have to let reps know that we are investing time as managers and sales leaders to be better coaches. We want to be coaches. Managers want to help their reps be better. They don't want to just sit around in a room and read through the forecast, and they don't want to just have everything being about, hey, the next deal and what's going on. We really want to help people build better personal skills. We want to help make every moment with a sales rep and with our sales teams a coaching moment. We can always learn something. So that's when we talk about making coaching work for you is prescribed content, do the pre-work, and engage the sales reps on a continuous basis.
Yeah, big surprise here. Preparation, the theme of preparation emerges. It doesn't matter if you're preparing for a coaching session on a pipeline, preparing for an individual deal, preparing for a call review, reviewing a recording of a call like we do on Call Camp. The preparation piece is important. And if you look at professional athletes, they don't show up to the film room cold. They show up having already previewed what they're going to be talking about and looking at so that they can make it a very productive use of time where people learn. So how do we make compelling events impactful, Kelly?
Yeah, I wanted to provide an example of a coaching session that we have within SalesHood, which is a sales enablement platform. One thing that we often find, and it doesn't matter how seasoned the sales reps are, but sometimes they lack the ability to identify and be honest about a compelling event. So if we see perhaps maybe our deals are slipping from this quarter into the next quarter or this month into the next month, and we just wonder, why is that happening? Well, that's kind of a diagnosis of a problem. And what we do at SalesHood is we recommend, a prescription. We provide a prescription to solve that. So if you got a lot of deals slipping, one of the modules, training modules, we call them huddles, that we recommend is a compelling events huddle. And that in that compelling events huddle, you as a sales manager are going to talk about compelling events. And that compelling events, the way that we can make it interactive and get the reps engaged is we ask them to come to the meeting prepared to share some stories. And one of the stories we ask them to share is a happy ears story. Hey, anytime in your career, have you ever had a deal where you had your happy ears on and you thought it was going to be happening because you were so positive and engaged, and it turns out the deal went south? Well, we want them to share those stories, those happy ear stories, with their peers. And the peers, you kind of chuckle and laugh, and everybody's got a couple of examples. But what that allows them to do is open up, get a little bit vulnerable, have some fun, and then we work through personal examples. Tell us of a specific deal that you're working currently. What's the compelling event in that deal? Share that with the team. Have the team say yay or nay. Does that sound like a compelling event? Is it a real one, or do you just have your happy ears on? So we're then able to use the power of the crowd, kind of social learning, to allow everybody to get engaged and talk about compelling events. And then what we can do is we can then take those deals, you as a coach and a manager, you got 10 deals now in front of you, and you've heard 10 different examples of compelling events. And what I usually see is about 7 out of the 10 actually aren't real compelling events, right? That the rep may have some happy ears on, or they've made an assumption about why that deal is going to close. But if we then take those 7 deals that are kind of not really maybe as qualified or have identified a compelling event, we then do some deal reviews on those specific 7. Then we've got an engaged group of 10 sales reps going through 7 real live examples where maybe there's a compelling event that hasn't been identified. What you end up with then are 10 very empowered reps who now can apply that learning and logic about compelling events to all of their deals. And what you'll see is that the quality of the pipeline will improve and the quality of the forecasting will improve.
Hey Kelly, I'm going to jump in here and give some lessons and takeaways to make it very concrete and impactful for the audience, for the people listening. And if you're on this, based on the subject line, my guess is that you're probably in sales management or aspiring to be in sales management or in sales leadership. All right, so the first thing from the previous slide was prepare. So you have to create the right environment. You have to expect preparation from people. You have to have things scheduled. You have to show up to them on time, simple things. The next thing that I'm seeing here in terms of culture is, and you might not even notice this, it's subtle, but notice their terms like compelling event or happy ears. They're very specific terms. Now, a lot of sales organizations have adopted those phrases and those little sayings. Happy ears means the sales rep's all excited that something's going to close, and they only hear the good stuff and they never think critically or hear the bad stuff. Sam probably doesn't even know what that is, right? A lot of marketers don't. She's smiling. So have a secret language like this. This isn't so secret anymore, but nevertheless, you want to try to have a cult-like language that happens within the company for how you go about doing these things. So when you talk about share a happy ear story, it's something everyone can get behind. They all know what you're talking about. If you don't work at the company, you don't know. You're outside of the club. You're either in the club or you're out of the club. And that's how you get people opening up and engaging and creating a safe space. And that's really my third takeaway is create a safe place for people to feel comfortable failing so that they can learn. It's just so important. All right, so with that, Kelly, take us to some tips here.
Yeah, so if there's a few things that I could share with you as managers when you're going to have your meetings, and these meetings might be a group meeting, maybe it's a weekly meeting you're having with your sales team, you really got to try and drive those reps to be more engaged in those meetings. I think we've all seen it, right? We've all been sales managers where you're sitting there, you get, again, 7, 8, 6 people, whatever, on your team. 2 of them are always active, always providing input, and 80% of them are kind of sitting in the back and not doing too much, only talking or only providing input if you specifically call them out. The way to drive that engagement is to actually get them to do stuff in the meeting. A little bit of pre-work in the meeting, share a deal, talk about the deal, share it with the team, get peer feedback. And then what you can do is, based upon that team meeting, then you pull their behavior and their activities and what they're talking about in those team meetings, then you pull that into the one-on-ones you're going to have with them. And that's really where you get a lot of that coaching happening. Now you can take it in a positive environment, talk about how their quarter's coming together, how their pipeline's looking, their close ratio, et cetera. But then you take some of those learnings and their participation in the team meetings, and then you can bring that into the one-on-one sessions. And at the end of the day, what you need to do as a manager is identify where they need some help and areas for improvement, reinforce the positive behaviors, right? Try and reduce the negative behaviors, reinforce, measure, and support. At the end of the day, as a good sales manager, as a good leader, as a good coach, you are there to support them. Remove barriers, help them be the best that they can be, and not be, that typical kind of negative micromanaging sales manager that we've probably all reported to at some point in our career. Reinforce, measure, and support.
And take this stuff, I love it, from the group meetings into the one-on-ones so that you can measure it and see that it actually changes the behavior of the reps. Getting the reps to change behavior is so important. So, well, changing rep behavior is important, but that starts with the managers. How do you get managers to change their habits to become better coaches?
Yeah, I think the biggest things here for me, Steve, and you referred to me earlier, or you let everybody know I was Canadian. So if I say no doubt about it, I'll try and say it as American as I possibly can. But
No, we want the Canadian version. Come on.
okay, no doubt about it. There you go. So no doubt about it. Evaluating your coaching. So how do you get managers to change their habits? Really, you got to encourage them to make every moment a coaching moment. Don't just think it's something that happens once a year at sales kickoff, right? You're going to do it once a year. We're going to teach them how to be, I'm going to be a coach at the sales kickoff. No, it's not then. It's not just in the QBRs that you're going to have on a quarterly basis. It's not just in your monthlies. It's truly every moment can be a coaching moment. Give feedback frequently. Be consistent. Don't wait. So I think that's number one. Make every moment a coaching moment. Number two is make sales coaching a team activity. It's not just you as the sales manager that can be an effective coach. It's you creating an environment for effective coaching. So peer feedback, social learning, bringing in other leaders from other areas of the company to talk about deals. Go through a deal review, bring your ProServe lead in, bring your engineering lead in to talk about real deals. That allows the reps to actually get better at telling their stories, selling the deal, because ultimately at the end of the day, the sales rep is trying to sell the customer, but really good big deals have to be sold internally as well. So that's the second thing. Make sales coaching a team activity. And then I think as any good manager, any good leader and coach, you got to explain why, right? You got to put it in the context of what's in it for me for that sales rep. You're not trying to help them change their behavior just because you want to, right? You're trying to help them change their behavior so they can be more successful. They can be more consistent. They can move from being a, and you probably wouldn't use this term, but being a B rep to being a consistent A rep. Everybody has, or most people have the capability to be an A rep. They just need a little help to help them move up that ladder and be consistent. And a lot of times that consistency comes from things we learn as managers through our many years in the business. You learn a couple of kind of go-to skills and techniques. You learn when you probably are having some happy ears and how to turn those off. You learn how to be paranoid because you always got messed up or screwed in a deal at one point in your career, probably many. So you got to take those skills and experiences and explain to the rep why you're telling them that, why you need them to improve. So I think those three: make every moment a coaching moment, make sales coaching a team activity, and just explain the why, what's in it for me. Those three key things.
Love it. Tweet us. We got any questions, Sam? Otherwise, we're going to keep rolling. Any
We're
comments?
Keep going.
All right, it's call time. Let's do it. So the first one that we're going to talk about here is, if I got to pull it up here, where'd I go? Nope, not that one. There it is. Okay, so this is very meta of us. What we're going to be looking at here as we listen to this call, or listening for, is the coaching of the manager. All right, so it's kind of a fun way of looking at the world. We're not really as interested in the content of the conversation as the coaching of the manager.
They're sort of using their own intuition rather than sticking to what marketing knows is going to work best. But I was curious, within your role, how you were working to make sure that messaging was always staying alive.
Jack, what are you trying to tell me?
I'm not trying to sell you anything. Just to give you a high-level overview, I'm calling from a company called Corporate Visions. We've been working with product and demand gen marketers at companies like Cisco and Avaya. Really what we do is help marketers push that messaging throughout the...
All right, so Kelly, this is a good old classic, what are you selling me? It's a cold call. It's a prospect who's saying, what are you selling me? And if you look at the manager's comments, the manager's a guy named Jeff Hendricks, and he's asking, is she in system 1 or system 2? Now that's more of our internal language here for our own methodology. That's our secret language, if you will. And then he says smooth transition to client intro. So any comments on, how do you actually go about providing coaching if you're going to do call coaching and feedback on calls that's in line with the methodology that you've been talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the things we always fall back to when we're talking about coaching frontline sales reps is trying to help them be better storytellers. if they've got good stories to tell about clients that are similar to the prospect that you're talking to. I like the fact in this one that we just heard that he pulled out a couple of customer names. Hopefully they were relevant, right? If we've got an SMB customer and we talk about Cisco, that might not be the best one to talk about. It's kind of good to have in your bag of stories ones that are relevant and that the client and the prospect can relate to. So that's one thing. The second thing we always talk about is never, and this sounds so fundamental, but I hear it all the time, you gotta ask open-ended questions, right? Never ask those closed-ended questions where you're gonna get a yes or no response. The second you get 1, 2, 3 closed-ended question responses, you're kind of dead in the water. You're not having a conversation anymore. All you are is having an inquisition. So open-ended questions are very critical, and use stories as much as you can.
Use stories as much as you can. Now, in this case, if you look at the coaching that's happening here by the manager, I'm gonna evoke a former call camp guest, Jim Keenan, who goes by simply Keenan, and he is a model of call coaching where he talks about observe, describe, prescribe. So observe, you simply observe, you suspend judgment, you describe what you're seeing, and then you prescribe after that what the person could do differently. Now, in this particular case, if you look at what Jeff is doing, Jeff is pretty much only observing in these comments. These are all observations on what the manager is doing. So I'm curious if you have any sort of a framework like that, or anything that you guys recommend at SalesHood for managers. So how should managers be providing feedback on when they're doing call coaching, or frankly even deal review, in such a way that the sales rep doesn't shut down, but rather the sales rep takes the feedback and changes?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I kind of referred to it earlier. We've all had sales managers that kind of fall into that, bad behavior of micromanaging, or not creating a space for a coaching conversation, or, and a bad manager is also not going to hold you accountable for, the right behaviors. If he or she lets the reps get away with bad behavior and isn't consistent in the application of what good looks like, you're going to run into trouble. So what we, really recommend is that we got to stay positive and try and always be encouraging, right? So nobody wants a manager who's always smiling and saying, hey, that was awesome, when it really wasn't. So start positive, always be encouraging when you can, empathize, appreciate the hard work they're going through, appreciate they got some nerves going on, right? And then I think if you can share specific examples you as a manager have overcome in similar situations, you tell them, hey, I've been in your shoes. I made that same mistake you've made. I've probably made it 10 times or 100 times more than you have. However, I grew from that. I learned, I applied, and then I had success. And that success has continued throughout my career. So even if you're making some of these, and I don't want to call them mistakes, but if you're making some of these areas or some of these actions that could be improved, how is that going to translate to a better career for you and more success? So I think it's stay positive, empathize and appreciate the hard work they're doing, and share some specific examples so they can understand that you've been there before.
I love it. I love it. One of the things I pulled up here after you were talking, Kelly, is our own internal scorecard that we use. The scorecard is just, in this case, 5 key behaviors that we originally developed with our management team, and had some representation from the reps to say, what are, so we don't try to boil the ocean and have the reps do 30 different things. Let's figure out what are the 5 key behaviors that correlate with conversions, and things like pre-call research. One is that the behavior wasn't evident or present. Yes, was it absolutely was great. The one that brought this to mind was one of them that came up with his client story. Did the rep tell a story about how the prospect's peer saw value? And that's exactly what you're talking about. So if you have, if you're trying to get started and you're trying to figure out what do we do with, applying a call coaching methodology here, a great way to do it is to have a clear definition exactly of what Kelly said on what does good look like, and come up with 5 to 10 key behaviors based on the different call types. Because this is the sort of thing that, in the case of Jack fills out 2 of these per week for his own calls. And that way he knows, he's aware of hopefully consciously competent, he knows why he was good on the call. Or if there's an area that he needs to improve, if he's being really honest with himself, he says, well, I did not ask questions after I secured the meeting. I give myself a 1 on that. Right now, he knows what needs to be improved based on that definition of good, and it does it in a very positive and productive fashion along the way. All right, so set up this call. This is one of your salespeople there at SalesHood, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's one of our sales reps, Josh Crookshank's been with us almost 2 years, so he knows the business. He's a good rep. He's not our top rep, and I would tell him that if he was sitting in there, he would know that. But in this case, I chose this call. It's a bit of a long call because he was actually doing a demo with a fairly large, I'd say a medium-sized company, but a pretty good deal for Josh and the business he was in. This particular company happens to be situated in Australia. We're located in San Francisco, so Josh wasn't going to get on a plane to go over there, so he was able to close this deal remotely, which is, hey, if you can do it, fantastic. And so this demo for Josh was very important because he had his champion, the enablement leader in this case that he was selling to, and then she was able to bring together the CEO, the COO, and a number of other key decision makers. So basically on this call, Josh has got everybody he needs to pull the trigger. And just so we can, I don't want to give the story away, but at the end of this call, Josh got the deal about 2 days later. So I wanted to bring this up as a good example of how we applied coaching. I was on this call listening, fly on the wall, but how I applied coaching afterwards.
I love it. And one of the things you're going to notice right off the bat is that Josh is doing most of the talking on this call. But in the case of a group demo for this particular call type, that's a completely fine thing because their expectation is that they're going to get a demonstration of capabilities. In which case, most of the time, the buyer is going to be doing a little question asking here or there. They're not going to be talking a very big percentage of the time. If this was a discovery call, it would look entirely different in terms of the percentage of talk time and the amount of talk versus listen, and the amount of interchanges, the back and forth, and I'm kind of looking up over here. So that's a very, very important note. If you're dealing with a group demo like this, especially when you have the economic buyer on the phone, their expectation at that stage of their buying journey is that you're going to talk. You better have something good to say.
That's right. Yeah, so maybe, Steve, if you wanted to go maybe to that first big yellow bubble on the left there, we can kind of listen to how Josh set up the call, which I thought was really a good example of reflecting on what he's learned to date and then pausing a little bit and then asking, hey, is this reflect what your objectives and key outcomes are?
Over there, some of the things that have jumped out at me. Ansarada, new funding in the last quarter, really looking to scale up. That means you need to be able to onboard, share best practices, and make sure that your teams are getting to ramp quickly. You've launched a new pod structure around industries, and so it's going to become more and more important to collaborate, share best practices, both within a pod, among the members of the pod, across pods, and then across the vast geographies that you cover. And then I've been diving through a little bit of the content from Winning by Design, really great, powerful sales methodology content, a little bit of video in there, then a lot of PowerPoint and PDF. We'll talk through some ways where you can take that great content, make it more impactful and help people get up to speed more quickly. And then with a real focus around prospecting, pipeline development, and then the peer-to-peer component of capturing from your teams today, both your leaders and your top sales reps, what they're doing well today so that new people can replicate that, not make the same mistakes in the future, and then make sure that our content is bite-sized, digestible, and that we can help your sales folks get up to speed quickly. Let me pause there for 1 second and see from Sam or anyone, what would you add?
I think that's really good. It's a big transition from us from transactional-based selling as well to more of a challenger, provocative sale.
Yes.
And that really calls for a lot more, training and development and testing and measuring and.
Hey, Steve, we could pause there.
Technology and content.
And what I want to do, just focus on there, and I did that with Josh, is just reiterate how important it was to come to that call well prepared, right? Talk about the current situation, remind them of the impacts of their current situation, the ideals that they're trying to get to, and the benefits. So he did that in that lead up. And then that person you heard talking there, that was the CEO. So I thought that was also smart in this call. Josh has his champion on the call, but he knows he's also got the CEO. So I thought it was great that he laid the question out there. Have I captured everything? Provided the silence, and then allowed the CEO to take over. And what you'll notice, and we won't get to all of them, but all of the red bubbles that are here, that's when the CEO is then engaging in the conversation. So I thought it was a great example how he set the stage up front, made it an interactive conversation, set the stage to be interactive, and then he was able to get that most senior executive then talking throughout the call.
Great and great job on the usage of the PowerPoint. We saw that with his slide deck and how he summarized the situation on one clean slide without using 8-point font, nice big 20-point font that people can read and very clearly articulated. And that moment, the thing that's interesting is that little snippet we heard, 120 seconds of this call. That 120 seconds of the call was the reason the deal closed right there. I mean, we can say that, Kelly, right? Pretty definitively. If he had fumbled there, pretty tough to recover from, right?
It really would be. Yeah, you're right. Like if you start off that call not letting them know you've been listening and you understand their pain and how you're going to help them, what I guarantee would have happened when you've got a large group like that over a Zoom meeting, what would happen? They'd start to disengage. They'd start to not pay attention. But in this case, he was able to grab that attention and get that senior level involvement.
Bingo. It's so hard to do, but think about what led up to that. The coaching that Kelly's talking about, the amount of times that he sat through someone else's opportunity deal review, and the amount of reflection that's gone into what can we do to improve our sales process, and how important that setup is for that big group demo, this type of a big group demo that includes the economic buyer, the CEO, as well as all the other C-level executives, it sounds like that's really huge. And that's the culmination of how the coaching comes together. So where do we go from here, Kelly?
I think if I remember, there was that big purple one, the next one over to the right there. Let me just hover there for a second and see what we were talking about there.
I have a
So this is actually where Josh, if you want to play a little bit here, so I'll set it up. So Josh now is going to start the demo, and he does something that I believe is a good best practice. He lets them know what are we going to talk about, and then in the demo, he's actually assumed a couple of their personas: sales guy or sales rep, sales manager, and then the enablement lead. So we won't be able to see all of those personas, but you'll see him setting it up here right at the start of the purple area there.
Good. And Kelly, I'm gonna hit play in a second. We got one question that's pertinent to what we just discussed. We want to hit on. Sam, go ahead.
So this is more of a statement that came from Joshua, but I really think it's worth discussing is the potential for a coachable moment with when closers say, "Let me pause there." Is there more potential there of that being interpreted as any other time the prospect speaks would be an interruption, or does that bring more conversation?
It's good.
Yeah, I was going to say, Steve, you go ahead because I think you're an expert at call thing, but then I've got an opinion as well.
Yeah, it's great. So this is one of those ones where I don't have any data. I love to be able to answer these questions with data. I feel like more often than not when I hear these, I can come with data. So this one's a pure opinion on this one. Actually, I take that back. There's a little bit of data. There's data on asking a question versus leaving a silence. We do have former research that was done by big sales training houses on that. And it turns out that there really is no difference between leaving silence in that sort of situation versus asking an open-ended question. Stylistically, I'd love to hear him ask, how did I get, is this right, first of all? Like, what elements did I get right? How is this summary? And then what did I miss? So I'd rather hear that compound question kind of broken down into that. In terms of how this call actually played out, I don't think it make an ounce of difference. And I think if we measured it 100 times, it might make a difference 1 out of 100. So Kelly, your thoughts?
Yeah, and that you did a great job answering it. And I don't have data either. I like to get folks talking as much as possible. That old adage, you know, we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So if we can get them engaged and talking, and I think it's important to say, hey, this is what I believe we've seen. What do you, you know, does this cover everything? So I think you answered it well, though.
Yeah, and Joshua, to that question, the whole thing about interrupting, it's a good thing to do up front. Hey, and I'll do this if I'm facilitating a call coaching session with one of our clients. I'll tell them in the very beginning, I'm here for you. If something I'm doing is not helpful for you, stop me and interrupt. So it is worth doing that type of thing. It's not something I think that most sales people do consistently. So, all right, so now let's go back and listen into the setup for the demo here.
All right, now let me jump over here. And I'm on my homepage now, and I have logged in as Lachlan. I'm a rep on the real estate elevator, on the real estate pod, and I've got a series of activities that have been assigned to me based on my role and my function. So you'll see here.
Hey, quick note here, and Kelly, this is kind of me talking to you. I love how you organized your demo around persona. So brilliant. I have a funny feeling you had something to do with that.
Good.
All right, here we go.
Assigned to me, I've got as one of the first activities, I'm going to be doing my real estate pod elevator pitch. What does it mean to be in the real estate pod? How do I talk about material information platform and virtual data room specific to real estate? And then I'm fairly new to the company, so I'm going through a learning path and learning the basics of the function. And then you'll see here at the top exactly where I left off in my last time I was here. And then I've got an awesome message from my CEO welcoming me to the company and letting me know why I should be so excited to be joining Ansarada. Further down on the right, you'll see social media style, an update of some of the popular activities happening. I can see that a number of my peers have completed their pitches, and I'll be able to go in and look and see how they tell the story as I prepare.
So Steve, we can pause there. So that's exactly the point here, is that Josh did a really good best practice that I love to see, is let the viewers know what they're going to see in the demonstration. Assume the role of the personas that are important to the folks that are going to approve this project. In this case, it's a sales enablement solution. So of course, you want to be able to reflect, how is a sales rep going to use this to be more successful and productive? Josh has got the CEO on this call. He's just also given the CEO a little bit of sugar, right? He said, hey, this is how you can invite your new sales reps to your company and tell them why you're there to help them be successful. So he's using one persona, but he's talking to the group. And I thought that was a really good best practice, is to always remember who's in the audience and what's your message, but assume those personas for your demo.
Hey, Kelly, as it pertains to the topic, so, managers and taking a coaching program and making a coaching culture, curious to get your thoughts on how you actually do it at SalesHood. Do you certify your sales reps on how to do persona-based demoing like this?
We do, yeah. So there's we talk about pitches and certifications at SalesHood. So one of the things we get our reps to do is be able to get certified on how to position SalesHood. We ask them to get certified on how to position specific solutions, and we also get them certified on how to position certain solutions in particular industries. And so in that industry, one of the things that they get scored on is the personas that they're talking to in that industry. And we look at language, right? If they're selling into the utilities sector, as an example, they may refer to field technicians, as opposed to if they were selling into the financial services sector and talking about financial planners. I mean, it sounds small, but when you're talking to somebody and demonstrating a product, you got to speak in their language, and assuming those personas allows you to do that.
And I also noticed the real estate pod. So I'm assuming he customized a demo instance of SalesHood for this demo so that they could see their own verticals and pod structure right within it.
That's exactly right. And that's another thing I know you would recommend all the time, but using that client's language, using their real product names and customizing the demo is why Josh was able to close this deal, right? He took that little extra time, and you said it earlier, he customized the presentation, made it easy to read, and then he customized his demo. That's a definite best practice.
Yeah, and these are the outputs of coaching. I mean, this is like, you ask the question, why do we even bother having a coaching culture in the first place? It's because of this. If a guy like Josh is doing this as a rep consistently, a lot of problems go away. All right, so where do you want to go from here?
Well, I think we don't have much time left. So those red bubbles are where the CEO interjects and he asks some questions around features. So I think that one you're hovering over now. Can you just?
Yeah, why don't we do this one about the accent? That's kind of fun, right?
Yeah, that's kind of fun. It's, you know, especially with exec vision and transcription. We also transcribe the videos. So the CEO asks about how we're going to handle the Australian accent here.
Let's do it.
The video that has the content that's most relevant to me, so that I can grab that.
It has the transcript done. Is that automatic, or do you have to load? Someone has to load the transcript.
It's AI based auto transcript.
How well does it understand the Australian British accents?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know so this is off of, you know, that video. The key area that we see we need to make up is around like company name. You know, Ansarada, we have to have someone speak that in so that it remembers what that actual word is. But general word's pretty good.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind testing that out with some of our stronger Aussie notes and British counterparts.
Fair enough. We've got folks from all over providing content, but happy to let you do that.
We can pause there. We won't listen to the whole thing, Steve. But
yeah, hold on here. I'll just get to it.
Over to
I love the
an example.
I love the blokes comment. Okay, go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, and it's so what Josh gets into, you know, it ends up being kind of a funny moment because you know, everyone starts poking fun at who's really got the accent, right? The Australian guys or the American guys, right? And but my point there in bringing up that section is Josh was human in his demonstration. He used humor when it was good to use humor. Obviously, you don't want to overdo humor and be cracking too many jokes and things like that, but we're all humans. People like to buy from humans. And so if you can be more human when you're having your conversation, and I know you know this, Steve, and be more human when you're doing your demo, be a little bit vulnerable, right? Like, we're all human. We all make mistakes. You know, the demo doesn't always go off perfectly. A little chuckle here and there, it makes things work real well. And you develop that rapport. Even though Josh has never met these people, he's meeting them over video in this case, but he's letting them know that he's a human and he's there to support them.
And that's also worth noting. We do know from you know, the AI and call analysis, speaking of AI and call analysis, that if there's laughter in a conversation, it converts higher than if there's not. So these little moments, and I once read an article about that. The best salespeople, especially whenever there's a tense moment in this sort of a situation. I mean, this company's evaluating a big investment. That's a tense moment, and you've got the CEO in the room with all the executives, and you know, and it's kind of a scary thing for them. It's a high risk situation for them, and it's certainly scary for your salesperson, no matter how much you claim it's not. To be able to bring some levity and crack a joke in that situation is one of the key roles of the salesperson. I mean, otherwise the sales engineers would just sell everything. They tend to not do that as much. So All right, so let's go down here. You want to talk about the implementation or the integration question, and then there was an interesting competitive question. Do you want to play that part?
Yeah, I think so. You can do the integration. I think just go to the competitive one, because this is now at the end of the call. Josh has asked, he said, hey, is there anything I didn't cover? Any final questions? And then somebody comes up with a question about a competitor. And I thought Josh handled it well, right? We all know, and we should train our sales reps not to go negative, not to talk down about the client. And he did a good job here just handling it, acknowledging that, yes, that was somebody that had a competing solution, and here's how we would work with that.
Very good. Let's play it.
Right. Okay.
And just one final question, Sean, Josh, I mentioned that we've got Talent LMS. How do you see SalesHood different to Talent LMS?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to the engagement and the peer-to-peer collaboration piece. The traditional LMSs are, you follow one set order and ask a lot of questions. Ours is you get the learning, you get the content, and you get the collaboration all in one platform.
Right, so we can pause there. So you saw what is a good technique and best practice always. He didn't focus specifically on that technology. He said the traditional LMSs. So what he did is he put that particular competitor into a bucket with other LMS, learning management system providers, and then he quickly pivoted to the things that makes us different, our value propositions and differentiators. So he didn't go down that rat hole of, and I've heard it, and it always makes me cringe if a rep talks specifically about a client and says something as if it's factual, and it might be. Even if it's factual, maybe they're in financial trouble, or maybe their CEO is a jerk and their customers hate them. The second you say something like that factual, though, in my opinion, you open yourself up for risk. And you also, I get a little bit of negative feeling of that when somebody does that against a competitor.
That answer is just so tight. We do know that for questions like that, the shorter answers are better, and the answers where they are more paced and answered in a slow way are better than if you answer quickly and start to freak out and your tone of voice changes. I'm just curious, Kelly, because it feels to me like he probably leveraged SalesHood to practice that. Did you guys have some kind of like a challenge on SalesHood where they had to record their answer to that question?
Yeah, we do. So we have what we call competitive huddles, and in that huddle we have different competitors that we normally run up against, and in the huddle we listen to their video, if we have it, their sales pitch, their documentation, and then the reps, if it's a big enough competitor, we actually have them record their response to that competitive huddle. And then what we do, we're integrated into Salesforce and a couple of other CRMs. If the rep identifies in the opportunity that they're competing against a particular competitor, then we feed that huddle directly into the opportunity within Salesforce or the CRM.
I love it. I think that's so important. I think I just screwed something up here. Let me see. Okay, so to pull it all together, I think that, and one of my big takeaways here is to get to a point where, again, not a top rep. Josh is a good rep, but he's not the top rep. Where a not top rep is able to do what he did on that call, it requires to have a sales coaching culture and do a lot of things right. So talk to us about the takeaways.
Yeah, really, at the end of the day, your frontline sales managers, you should hire frontline sales managers and nurture frontline sales managers who want to be a coach. You can't force someone to be a coach, right? You've got to nurture someone to be a coach. You got to hire people who want to be coaches. You've got to promote people who have coaching abilities. So those reps that do get involved in the peer learning environments, the ones that are more active, the ones that are collaborative, those can become your next generation of sales managers. Very importantly, the managers want to lead by example. So if we're asking somebody to expose themselves and do a pitch certification for that all of the peers across the world are going to see, well, the best way to get them to do that is have a sales manager go first, record the company pitch, record the competitive pitch, record the new product pitch. Back when Eli was at Salesforce.com, our CEO, Eli Cohen, was at Salesforce during the hypergrowth years, His first stop when they came up with a new sales presentation was to go to Jim Steele, who was the CRO or president at that time. Jim would go first, and then they'd share that with the field, and then everybody else saw, oh my gosh, our CRO's already done it. Then they would go ahead and do it. So that leading by example is very critical. Being vulnerable by example is very critical for a sales manager. The power of storytelling, I think we all know it, but the printed word only came out so many years ago, 700 years ago, whatever it was. Humans have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, and a couple million depending upon the species. We know how to tell stories. People listen to stories. If we can get our sales reps to be better storytellers, we all know this, but get them to know the stories, the case studies, the relevant customers that relate to that prospect. Get them to prove that they can tell a good story, and you do that with good enablement. And then leaders, at the end of the day, the most important thing as a sales manager needs to do is inspire. Inspire the reps to be the best they can be. Inspire them to be successful. Inspire them to hit their numbers. Take away that weekly meeting of where you're just going through the forecast and you're micromanaging and nobody's yelling, hopefully, but try and get them to be inspirational leaders and coaches.
Amen to that. And as it pertains to call camp and call coaching specifically, leaders, I challenge you, when's the last time that you put yourself out there and you made a cold call, or you did a group demo, or in front of people, and then more importantly, record that in a compliant legal way. Of course, there's lots of ways to do that. If you have questions about call recording laws, I'm more than happy to help. Record that thing, and then there's no better way to get everyone behind the effort and the cause than for them to hear you down there in the trenches making the calls just like everybody else. It's just great. So talk to us about some content you got up there, Kelly, on your website.
Yeah, so there's quite a rich area of sales coaching. I think there's 27 blogs specifically on sales coaching. I think there's 120 or something like that across all other enablement categories. But sales coaching specifically, just real simple, saleshood.com/blog. Go there. You can pick the category of sales coaching. Tons of content there for you.
Yeah, great stuff. I mean, SalesHood's known as having great content. That's why we invited them to be on here today. And hot off the presses, Sam, you wrote this, so why don't you tell them about this?
So if you're looking to get started building a coaching culture, this is a 43-point checklist and guide on how to do so. Yeah. 43
points. I didn't even realize that we could have 43 points on how to build a coaching culture. So if you can find 44, I challenge you to find 44 and 45. Then again, Kelly, you and Eli probably will if nobody else will. All right, with that, those are your calls to action. Do we have any Q&A? Anything coming in?
Last minute question from John here. Any thoughts on the best breed of coaching methodologies?
Best breed of coaching methodologies. All right, so I'm going to answer that a different way. So John, there are different sales training or sales process methodologies. I'm going to make a statement that the sales training houses don't want you to know. If it comes to a sales training methodology for your reps, really what they're selling is the language, the consistent language, because it actually goes back to what Kelly, you were saying about human beings being storytellers. People remember the little language of sales methodologies. So going back to, like spin selling, people remember situation problems or situation problem implication need payoff. Those are the types of questions. Corporate executive or challenger, teach, tailor, take control. Sandler with the submarine and reversing and strip lining and 30-second commercial. So there's a language associated with the methodology that the reps use in their selling, because people remember the secret code, the secret language, the tribal knowledge, if you will. So if you can come up with that your own, you really actually don't need the big sales training houses. If you can't come up with that on your own, you do. That's where their role is in the world, and they make their money for a reason, because you can get consistency from it. But that doesn't directly answer your question, because I'm answering a question about the sales training methodologies and what the best one is. And really, to answer that question, by the way, is it just depends. If you're in more of a transactional sale, Sandler's probably going to be better. If you're going to be more in a highly complex sale, Miller Hyman and some of those programs are better. Or I know you guys love Barry Ryan, and Selling Through Curiosity is a great one. So there's a lot of really good ones. But I think there's the real question was, what's your favorite coaching methodology? I mentioned before from Keenan is observe, describe, prescribe. Just watch, and he takes this from ski instruction, watch the person doing their thing, describe what they're doing, and then prescribe in the form of the question. So a perfect example is a rep doing discovery. Hey, Billy, you did a great job here of asking some questions. You uncovered one of their problems, one of their challenges. After that, you jumped into a demo of the solution. Okay, that's a perfect example of a description. I'm describing what I see. You found a problem, and then you jumped into a description of the solution. How could you probe the problem more and understand the impact of the problem so that when you get into the solution, it hits home and you can show ROI? That would be the example of using observe, describe, prescribe. So we love that. There's also a great content piece on our website called the Ultimate Sales Coaching Playbook that talks about exactly how to do this and how you can get the reps to first self-assess before you jump in with the observe, describe, prescribe model. But Kelly, do you have anything else to add on that? Do you have a methodology that's recommended by SalesHood for coaching?
Yeah, we do have, so just like there's selling through curiosity you mentioned with Barry Ryan, we recommend for sales reps, we've got managing through curiosity. And that managing through curiosity is basically, it's just how to ask better, curious questions of your sales reps, how to ask open-ended questions. There's a whole bunch of things that are managing through curiosity has, that sounds like, this sounds basic, but how to ask open-ended and layering and probing sales coaching questions. What else can you tell me about that? What do you mean? How'd you come up with that? So really that's what we would recommend. But you said something at the start when you were starting responding to this is consistency. That to me is, I've seen so many coaching methodologies and sales methodologies at the different companies I've worked at over the years. It really doesn't matter to me. You pick one, you stick to it, and you make it consistent. And you said it, if everybody's got the language and before they're doing stuff, they can go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to do this. That's where you get that consistency of the sales effort.
And I'm reminded, Kelly, of this blog article I wrote back in 2016. I said sales training programs. Now, to be fair, I think I stole this idea from somebody that I heard it from. I just heard a manager somewhere along the way make this comment, and it stuck with me. Sales training programs are like world religions. I don't care which one you are, just stick to it and be really good at it. Another great one I recommend everyone check out is a guy named Michael Bungay Stanier. It is called the coaching, what the hell is it called here? I'll find it here. It's called The Coaching Habit. The Coaching Habit's a phenomenal book all about asking questions and changing your one-on-one so that you're asking questions. And Kelly, I think it's important for us to say, because you and I are talking about how important asking questions is of managers, no matter the coaching format or approach that you're using. But we never really talked about the reason. The reason is because people value more what they conclude for themselves than what they're told. My mentor, Tom Snyder, taught me that. It's so important. People value more what they conclude for themselves than what they're told. So if you can get the person through asking questions, generating curiosity questions like he's mentioning, to come up with the answer for themselves, it's going to stick much, much higher likelihood than if you just tell them what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, 100%. And I've actually, the statistics we've got around that, like if you actually get this coaching culture going, we interviewed 15,000 salespeople and approximately 2,000 sales managers. And the results literally are about a 2x increase in rep attainment, 112% increase in deal size across the board, 32% reduction in time to close deals, 20% reduction in rep attrition. So this isn't like this doesn't work. If you develop a true coaching culture, you will see the results.
Amen to that. Keep it positive and productive. Yeah, I love it. So everyone definitely check out SalesHood for that research. That's great. What is that study called there, Kelly?
That was an internal study that we did of our installed base. This was about 15 months ago. We had about 15,000 sales reps respond.
All right. Well, we got to get that one turned into a public downloadable PDF. That sounds freaking cool. I love it. Any other questions, Sam? Otherwise, we're going to wrap.
Nope, we're good to wrap.
What are we doing next month?
Next month, I have not started a topic yet, but we are working with the Bridge Group.
Yeah. The Bridge Group, the inside sales consulting firm, they are badasses. I have a funny feeling it's probably going to be more of your, unscheduled flavor of call, either lead follow-up or outbound prospecting call. That's their forte, is my guess. and look for that one. That's going to be a great one. Kelly, thank you for joining. Any final words of wisdom?
No, I just want to thank you for having me here today, and thank everybody for attending. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Everyone get out there and coach, put these things into practice. If you change first, just like man in the mirror, just like Michael Jackson, if you look in the mirror and change yourself first, you're going to see amazing things happen with your reps.